Page 25. It says, once Caddy had seen President Lincoln. He was Mr. Lincoln then. She had been quite a little girl, and they had taken her to St. Louis for a visit. There had been a torchlight procession, and someone had held her up to watch it from a window. And Mr. Lincoln had been in the procession. She had never forgotten the deep-lined face of the great man. Caddy slipped on her nightgown and crept to the open window, where she could hear the voices from below more clearly. "If it weren't for my wife and children," her father was saying, "Englishman and peace lover though I am, I should be fighting for abolition." "That's not the usual English assignment, Woodlawn," said Mr. Tanner. "The English aristocrats see no wrong in slavery." When he answered, her father's gentle voice was suddenly bitter. "Ah, the English aristocrats!" he cried. "I am proud to say I do not see things from the aristocratic point of view." "Really? You don't like slavery?" What a shock. "Johnny," cried her mother reproachfully, almost warningly, it seemed. His voice fell to a lower key. "Isn't that liberal, though, not to like slavery?" "Probably. I don't know. What do you think?" "Johnny," cried her mother reproachfully, almost warningly, it seemed. His voice fell to a lower key, but it was still vibrant with emotion. "God created all men free and equal." "Really?" he said, "and men themselves must come to understand the truth at last." Shivering in the chill night air of autumn, Caddy went to bed. She crept in with Teddy, who had made a warm nest for herself and was peacefully asleep. Sometimes Caddy envied Mother and Clara, who were so dark and calm and beautiful, who seemed to find it so easy to be clean and good. But tonight her father's words echoed in her ears. She did not quite understand them, nor know why her father was so bitter when he spoke of England. She only knew that whatever father said was true, and that she loved him better than anybody else on earth. She was glad that her hair was rough and red like this. See, we must question. Why do we believe what we hear is true? That's the big question here. I mean, is slavery wrong? You decide. Let's decide. Pigeons in the sky. The next day was Sunday, and of course the schoolhouse was open and everyone went to church. Mrs. Woodlawn brought a bunch of autumn flowers to decorate the desk, and that's the end. I'm just going to finish it right there. Page 27. So, let's make up our decision. If our dad decides that he likes slavery and wants to be a slave owner, what do we think? Do we question him? Or do we say, no matter what he says is right, even though he might like to own slaves and beat them to death? He might think his slaves are his kids are slaves and beat them to death. Or do we want to be like Caddy and say, well, maybe no slaves, maybe no beating? I think that's probably right. Anyway, the next day was Sunday, and of course the schoolhouse was open and everyone went to church. Mrs. Woodlawn brought a bunch of her autumn flowers to decorate the desk. She had driven her over earlier with her husband and Mr. Tanner to open and air the schoolhouse, which had been closed since summer. The children followed on foot. They had a mile to go across a field and along a dusty road. They rubbed their feet through the tall grass by the schoolhouse gate to take the dust off their Sunday shoes. People from all the surrounding farms and homesteads had come to hear the circuit rider speak. Even Sam Hankinson was there, sitting in a back seat with his 3 little half-breed children about his knees. But his Indian wife stayed outside. Caddy peeped at them curiously through his fingers when Mr. Tanner's prayer grew very long. How would it be to have an Indian for a mother, she wondered. Then she looked at Mrs. Woodlawn, so fine in her full black silk and the cameo brooch and earrings and the small black hat, and she was glad that this was her mother, and yet she thought she would not be ashamed of an Indian mother, as Sam Hankinson seemed to be ashamed of his Indian wife. He's ashamed of his Indian wife, yet he married her. Is there a problem there? Or would you rather have, just no matter what, maybe the Indian wife was nicer, but we don't know. Maybe we should question our parents and their beating philosophies and their slavery. But maybe we should just say, no matter what, they're correct. No matter what I hear, it's correct. Or should we question it? There's a philosophical question. Let's be Aristotle and question things. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll just hear what we hear and stick with it, no matter what it is, which is what a lot of people do. Either way, I mean, you're not being malicious, but I mean, my dad beating us, I would question it. And slavery is another question. I don't think I'd agree with it. Well, anyway.